Hi everyone, Nate here from WASD20. Today I'm bringing you another D&D 5th edition character creation video, this time the Paladin. The Paladin is a holy warrior, a pretty beefy fighter who also gets to call on the power of magic because of a sacred oath they have taken to uphold some kind of cause of righteousness or justice. Now this video is going to be unlike some of my other character creation videos because this is not just any paladin. This paladin also happens to be a Copper Jackal. Now what is a Copper Jackal, you might ask? Well, Tim and James over at Tabletop Terrors have been slowly releasing stuff about their homebrew world, and one of the groups they have in their homebrew world is an organization known as the Copper Jackals. And for this, I'll read a quote directly from tabletopterrors.com to kind of describe it. A Copper Jackal is, quote, a high fantasy D&D style Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, betrayed by the crown, fugitives with a code of military honor. So you can read more about them over at tabletopterrors.com, or I'll also put a link to the Facebook group down in the description below for the Copper Jackals. But mostly it's going to be the same, just a couple minor differences that make the Copper Jackals a little more powerful than your average D&D character. But enough rambling from me. Let's get down with our character sheet and player's handbook. Alright, so we've got our character sheet and we're ready to go here. The Paladin page is on page 82 of the player's handbook, but I actually have my own order that I prefer going in here. So rather I start with race, then I go to ability scores, background, then class, and lastly equipment. We're going to begin with race then. First off, a couple things I know about this character. I have a name for him, a first name at least. His name is going to be Yorek. And I know that he's going to be human. And thanks to the guys over at Tabletop Terrors, I actually have an official character portrait for this guy. This was done by an artist named Gauntis. I think it looks pretty great, so thanks guys. Now Yorek is initially going to be level 1 here. Copper Jackals always are going to start at level 3. And eventually I'll be leveling up beyond that. But for now, I'm going to put Paladin level 1. And I'll be changing that. Background I don't know yet. Player name, that's me. Alignment, I'm going to be going with neutral good on this guy. Paladins are almost always good, we'll talk. And now we're going to read about humans. You might know something about them, I don't know. So it talks here about how humans have a great variety among them. This is on page 29, by the way, of the player's handbook. And as usual, I'm going to skip to the more statistically relevant parts. There are many different names and ethnicities here. Here on page 31, we see the human traits. And you always want to start by looking at those traits in terms of recording your stats for your race. So it says here we have ability score increase. Your ability scores each increase by 1. So I'm just going to put a reminder here. +1, +1, +1, all the way down. Human, okay, we already know about age. Okay, so alignment we've already got decided. Size, that doesn't matter so much right now. Speed will be important for us. We want to put 30 feet. And that's again how far we can move in combat. It says here you can speak, read, and write common and 1 extra language of your choice. Humans typically learn the languages of peoples they deal with, including obscure dialects. They're fond of sprinkling their speech with words borrowed from other tongues. Write this down in other proficiencies and languages here. Common. And we'll take Dwarvish for now. Now, here's a note on humans. You have this variant human trait. If your campaign uses the optional feat rules from Chapter 5, your Dungeon Master might allow these variant traits, all of which replace the human's ability score increase trait. So you could choose, it says, 2 different ability scores of your choice to increase by 1, rather than all of them increasing by 1. And you gain proficiency in 1 skill of your choice, and gain 1 feat of your choice. So you'd want to talk to your Dungeon Master about that. I'm not sure what my Dungeon Master has planned yet. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as +1 for all of them. And that's going to be it for human. For a lot of the races, you are going to be writing stuff in the features and traits section here for your race, but there's not a whole lot there for human. Next on our list, we've got ability scores. Now, if you've watched many of my character creation videos, you know I'm a big fan of rolling for my ability scores. But in this case, if I'm following the directions for creating a Copper Jackal, you see that the standard array is the way for generating ability scores here, which is a decent system. I like it. It can be found on page 13 of the player's handbook. And it is right here. So we're going to just be taking these scores and filling them in. 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8. Again, that's on page 13 of the player's handbook. And yeah, that's going to be my ability scores. Okay, so for a Paladin, the book recommends having high strength and a high charisma. Charisma is going to be pretty important for spell casting for a Paladin. Every spell casting class has a different ability score that's very important, and for the Paladin it is charisma for a lot of their abilities. So strength, I'm going to be taking my 15, which now becomes a 16. My 14 I'm going to put into charisma, which is going to make this a 15. My 13 I'm going to put in constitution, which would make him a 14. He's going to be a pretty beefy, tough guy. For my 12, I'll put that in intelligence. Now, a lot of people might think dexterity would be important, and it is pretty important for getting into combat sooner. But for the idea I have for my character concept is that this is a pretty brainy guy. So I'm going to make sure his intelligence is somewhat high. And then we will go with dexterity at a 9. I'm sorry, dexterity at a 10 plus 1 is 11. The 8 will go for wisdom, which will then become a 9. Alright, now this would be the way that we do our ability scores, but there's a caveat. I'm making a Copper Jackal. That's right, folks. I'm not just any character. I get to add 1 to each and every one of these. Again. Once for my race, and then again. So I kind of forgot about that. Now I got to go in and erase them. So yeah, if you look at the instructions for creating a Copper Jackal, you get to add 1 to every standard array score. So don't just assume and go do that unless you're making a Copper Jackal. Don't just show up to your DM's table saying, my guy's a Copper Jackal. That is specific to Tim and James's homebrew world. Okay, now my ability score modifiers are found on the top right of page 13, and so these are the things that I'm going to write down next to my ability scores, and these will become, of course, relevant for adding to my attacks, adding to my skill proficiencies, stuff like that. Alright, there we go. I've got my ability scores and now my ability score modifiers filled in there. So I'm going to be filling those ability score modifiers in here eventually, but not yet. Now that I've got my ability scores, I'm going to move on to background. Alright, so backgrounds are found on page 125 of the player's handbook. And that's where they start. And don't forget that you can customize your own background. You can make your own background, and it gives you instructions for how to do that here. And there are also lots of great homebrew backgrounds. Just look up D&D 5e homebrew backgrounds, and you can find lots that people have made that are really good. There's a ton out there. But I do have one selected that fits with my idea for my character. So Yorek was raised on a farm in a serf family. Nearly a slave, and he tried to run away. The son of a local lord had taught him how to read, and he wanted to go to the big city, and he wanted to find more books. He loved reading. And so he ran away, but he was caught at the age of 10, and then he ran away again at the age of 17 or 16 or something for good. And his parents supported this and knew that they had to give him a better future, and despite what it may have cost them. So he runs away to the big city, and there in the big city, he gets a job cleaning the floors in a library, and he takes advantage of this time to be around books. So that's a little bit of background, and maybe we'll get into more of his story as we go on, but that's going to make the Sage background a really good one for Yorek here. So the Sage background is found on page 137 of the Player's Handbook. It says here, you spent years learning the lore of the multiverse. You scoured manuscripts, studied scrolls, and listened to the greatest experts on the subjects that interest you. Your efforts have made you a master in your fields of study. So skill proficiencies are going to be Arcana and History. So I'm just going to put a little check in Arcana and History. And what else does it say here? Languages. I get 2 of my choice. So I'm going to assume that's 2 in addition to the ones I already have. So I think I'm going to go with Common, Dwarvish. I'm going to go with Draconic, which is the language of the Dragonborn. And I think I'm going to go with Infernal, which is the language of the Tieflings. Equipment. So I get a bottle of black ink, a quill, a small knife, a letter from a dead colleague posing a question you have not been able to answer, a set of common clothes, and a belt pouch containing 10 gold pieces. So I'm going to write that down now in my equipment section down at the bottom of my character sheet here. Alright, so I've got that stuff recorded under equipment here, and next up we get to choose some of these things. So specialty, it says roll a d8, but I already know what I'm going to do here. I was a librarian. So I'm going to write here, Sage Librarian, under my background. Feature, Researcher. Now this is really cool. It basically means that you can work with your DM to, if you don't know the answer to something, to possibly be able to figure out the answer by research. And so it's kind of up to you and the DM to figure out how that might work. And it doesn't always necessarily work. You don't necessarily get the answers to everything. But I'm going to write that down here under Features and Traits. Researcher. And I'm just going to note the page number, page 138. Alright, so I've already put a lot of thought into the backstory and written some stuff up. So for my ideals, bonds, flaws, personality traits, I just chose some that already fit with the idea I had for the character. So what I've got here, I've read every book, or at least I like to boast that I have. There's nothing I like more than a good mystery. For my ideals, the path to power or self-improvement is knowledge. For my bond, I work to preserve a library. And for my flaws, most people scream and run when they see a demon. I take notes, so maybe sometimes a little lacking in common sense. So again, these are just things that are really going to help me roleplay my character and can help me kind of get in this guy's head a little bit. Alright, so that does it for background. Now we head over to class. So let's talk about the Paladin. So there's all this great flavor text here on page 82 of the Player's Handbook where you can read all about the Paladin. But the Paladin is basically generally a holy warrior of some kind. Usually they are righteous and morally upright, and they're going to be committed either to a deity or to an oath or an ideal of some kind. And for my character, he swore an oath when he saw the library burning before his very eyes, the library that he had worked in and risen to the position of librarian from a mere washer of floors and had dedicated much of his life to. It burned in a battle. And so there he was struck with this obligation, this call to make an oath, to preserve knowledge, and to fight for the ways that knowledge can better life for all creatures. So if you're making a paladin, you definitely would want to look through some of this stuff to try to figure out what would your oath be. You don't have to pick an oath till level 3, but it's good to think ahead, as the book states, and try to come up with what that might be. Under class features here on page 84 of the Player's Handbook. So first off, we've got hit dice. We have 1d10 per paladin level.
Okay. Then we've got hit points at first level, 10 plus your Constitution modifier, and I'm going to do 2, so that'd be 12. Okay, hit points at higher levels I don't quite need to worry about yet. Armor, my proficiencies. This is what I'm proficient with. I am proficient with all armor and shields. Weapons, I am proficient with simple weapons and martial weapons. I am not proficient with any tools, and I am proficient in the saving throws Wisdom and Charisma. In terms of skill proficiencies, I get to choose 2 from Athletics, Insight, Intimidation, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. So let's see what I want here. I think I definitely am going to want Religion. Because again, this kind of fits with my idea of this character, that he has studied a lot, and he just knows a lot about these things. So it's an intelligence-based skill, and I think he should be pretty good at it. Other than that, I'm going to choose maybe a more practical one for combat. I think I'm going to go with Athletics. Alright, now for equipment, I did take the equipment that came with my background down here. So if you're doing that, you're going to stick to this equipment here. However, remember that you can forego that equipment and this equipment and instead just roll for gold, as is described in Chapter 5, the equipment chapter. So I kind of skipped ahead in my order here, and I did my equipment because it came up in the class section here. So we'll stick with that, and I went ahead and chose some of these things. So it says here I get a martial weapon and a shield, or 2 martial weapons, and I chose to go for a martial weapon and a shield. So I have a war hammer and a shield, which is going to give me +2 to my armor class when I have it equipped. So I'm going to put up here that I could possibly get 18. And then it says, by the way, I got my armor class from chainmail. So it says chainmail and a holy symbol. Chainmail gives me an armor class of 16. But again, with my shield, it could potentially be an 18 if I have that equipped. I forgot to write down holy symbol, so I'll do that. And I'd have to think about what that could be. All right. Then it says here that I get 5 javelins or rather any simple melee weapon, and I opted to go for 5 javelins, so I recorded that here. They're weapons that I can poke people with or throw. And then it says a priest pack or an explorer's pack, and I am going to go with an explorer's pack. And to see all about what that includes, you would want to look here on page 151 of the player's handbook. But it's a lot of very useful stuff, so I'm just going to write here page 151, so I can remind myself of what that all includes. And that is going to about do it for my equipment for now. The only thing I need to do is record some of my bonuses here and my damage. So let's see. For my Warhammer, my attack bonus is going to be my strength modifier plus my proficiency bonus. Now, if you look in the proficiency bonus section, you notice for all classes, proficiency bonus is +2. Until you get to level 5, and then it goes up to +3. And then I'm going to add proficiency bonus plus strength for most melee weapons, unless it's a finesse weapon or something like that, or a thrown weapon. So 5 for my attack bonus. Now for my damage, I do not get to add my proficiency bonus. I only get to add my strength. So 1d8 plus 3 will be my damage. I'll roll a d8 and add 3 for recording damage if I hit. Javelins, I will be doing the same thing here. And for thrown weapons, I could use my dexterity, but obviously I want to use the higher one, which is my strength. So it's going to be the same here. So I've got my weapon damage recorded there, and I've got my armor class recorded. Very important things. Next up, we're going to continue through the Paladin class and read about the class features. Alright, so one of these great abilities is Divine Sense, and this is my ability to detect good or evil and use an action to kind of use this sense to detect good or evil, celestial, fiend, or undead within 60 feet. I'm going to write here under Traits and Features, Divine Sense. And I get to use this 1 plus my Charisma modifier times, so 1 plus 4 times before a long rest. I'll put times 4, long rest. And I'm going to put the page number because it's always good to remind yourself of what that is. Page 84. Alright, the next thing I get is this ability called Lay on Hands. And this is a great part of being a paladin. It's that you can heal your friends. The paladin is not as heavy a healer as the cleric, for example, but can still do a lot. So basically, this will allow me to restore a total number of hit points equal to your paladin level times 5. So I'm just going to say level times 5 HP. And you can also cure disease or poison that's affecting a target. It replenishes when I take a long rest. So just put long rest. Alright, so I can use this kind of pool of hit points to restore. So I can decide, if I'm a level 3, got 15, I can decide I'm going to give you 5 and this other person 5, and I can kind of decide how to distribute them like that. Alright, now coming soon, when I get to level 2, is fighting style and spell casting. So yeah, this should be fun. The other thing is the sacred oaths when I get to level 3. So I am going to be leveling this character up to 3 eventually. I'm not going to do that on camera here, but yep, that'll be some important things. And for the spells, I happen to have these pretty nice spell book cards that I haven't got to use yet. So I'm excited to finally be playing a paladin and put these cards to use. So just don't forget that this chart here at the beginning of every class section, this one's on page 83, is really your guide. So at level 1 I get Divine Sense, Lay on Hands. Level 2 I get Fighting Style, Spellcasting, and Divine Smite. And level 3 I get Divine Health and Sacred Oath. So with the Paladin, you're really building a lot of stuff in those early levels, which is pretty cool. Alright, now it's time to go in and kind of fill in some of the other things that I missed along the way. Inspiration is something that your DM gives you and you wouldn't want to fill that in yet. Initiative, that's going to be based on your dexterity. So my dexterity modifier is +1, so my initiative is going to be +1. Next thing we need to do is fill in our saving throws and skills. So these are going to be based on our ability score modifiers. So for strength, I'll have a +3, dexterity +1, constitution, etc. Now these ones I'm proficient in, so that means I get to add my proficiency bonus. So for wisdom, I have a 0, but I get to add that, so it's actually +2. Charisma, I have a 3, but it's actually going to be 5 because I get to add that +2 proficiency. Same thing is true of all these skills that I'm proficient in. Alright, so I've got all my saving throws and my skills filled in there, and I think I've done them right. Now my passive wisdom or passive perception is going to be based on my wisdom, which is 0. And basically what you do is you add 10 plus perception. So 10 plus perception for me is 10. And that's just how good you are at noticing things. Usually evil things that the DM has waiting for you in the shadows. Alright, so that is it for Yorek here, my human paladin, a Copper Jackal, a paladin, and a scholar. And stay tuned for where Yorek might show up in a actual game coming up soon, along with some friends of mine, with the guys from Tabletop Terrors DMing. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and when that happens, I'll probably put a link in the description below. I think it'll happen sometime in July of 2015. So looking forward to that, and yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. We didn't get into the spell casting here because we're just taking them up to level 1 for today, but if you have any questions about how that all works, let me know. I'd love to help you out. Alright, that's it for now. Everybody take care, and I'm sure you'll see me again soon. Bye.